Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to Reddit Aliens. I am John, and as always, thank you so much for being here. Good topic for you today. Let's do it. What's the creepiest thing you've ever seen while driving at night? Please remember to like, share, comment, hype, subscribe, listen, and ask for shoutouts. And have a great day. My parents live in the middle of nowhere, and you have to drive through miles of empty farmland to get to their house with nothing but hay and the occasional group of cows or horses to give variety to the view. I was on my way back home from a visit sometime between 11 and 12 a.m., and I spotted a huge mass on the road as I crested a hill and had to hit the brakes to avoid the swerve. I didn't hit it, but I pulled over to the shoulder and backed up because my first thought was, oh god, it's a dead deer. Gotta haul it off the road or someone's gonna die. Well, as I neared it, it was clear that it was way too bulky for a deer. My taillights lighted up when I was about 10 feet away. It became clear that it was an enormous, and I mean enormous, male hog that was still alive and just laying there, huffing and puffing with its guts all poured out on the road. I had no way of getting that thing off the road. They weigh many hundreds of pounds. But I figured I'd call the police at least and make someone aware. So I put my car in park and dialed 911. As I was telling the lady on the line about the hog, I got curious and backed up a bit closer so I could see it clearly in the light of my car lights. Its guts weren't spilled out because it had been hit by a car. It was very clearly the victim of something huge taking a bite out of him. I mean, a whole chunk about the length of my forearm was missing from its stomach, and there was a dark trail of blood where it had crawled onto the road and then collapsed. I noped right out of there and never stopped until I got home. Hogs are huge creatures, and as far as I knew, the biggest carnivores living in the area were coyotes, but this was no bite from a canine. Middle of nowhere, rural Pennsylvania, heading to a state park known for stargazing. I knew that it was a slow, dark, boring drive, even though it wasn't that far, but it was all windy, narrow mountain roads and very dark. We're on the main road, still about half an hour away from the turn we need to make, when I see a sign telling us to turn left and to go to the park. I'd heard they were connecting a couple of roads and that there'd be a shortcut to the park from this main road, so I assumed it was finished and we'd stumbled onto it. We turned left to take the shortcut and almost immediately regretted it. In just 2 to 3 miles, we'd gone from beautiful, quaint countryside to some creepy, dilapidated town that scared the bejesus out of me. My husband seemed fine, so I told myself I was just overreacting. I see a fire up ahead to the left near a fork in the road. As we get closer, it appears to be an enormous bonfire surrounded by wrong-turn type mutants, all milling about the fire. They were some shitty campers and a couple of trucks parked around them. The houses look like tar paper shacks of the oldest, cheapest hunting cabins you've ever seen. The whole scene was depressing. They were all guys and all dressed like old-timey prospectors or something, looking like the mountain men guys who hunt Bigfoots and such, but totally menacing and evil. About 15 to 20 guys, no women or children in sight, even though it's only like 8 p.m., but it's winter in PA, so fully night. As we approached, they all stopped talking and turned to stare at our vehicle. Then a couple started walking toward the road. I was consumed by this overwhelming feeling of dread and suddenly scared for my life. Before I could say a word, my husband floored it, probably doubling our speed, and swerved around the creepers as we flew up the hill, taking the fork on the right. He was white-knuckling it and slowed as soon as the fire faded from my sight, but I was terrified that they'd come after us. My husband just said, I don't know what that was, but it wasn't in people. Where the f*** are we? The whole thing was so frightening, but I couldn't really express why I was so terrified. I just was. My husband's never afraid of anything, real or paranormal. We've explored a number of haunted sites, and he's totally unfazed by everything. He gets happy and excited when I'm ready to have a heart attack and pee myself. So the fact that he was freaking out scared me more than anything. We eventually made it to the park, but didn't stay long, as we were both exhausted and still on edge. We didn't leave the way we came and took our usual route back, avoiding the new road to the park. We talked about it all night, but really couldn't figure out what was going on there that scared us so much. Just that the people and the place itself seemed wrong and evil. He put it best when he said, "Those hillbilly mutants looked like they'd eat you and me." So once the sun was up in the morning, we decided to go back and check it out in daylight. We took the same major road and made the same left turn at the sign for the state park. We were in a small town that looked nothing like what we'd seen the night before. There was a little gas station and a tiny market on the right and some small but neat houses on the left. We eventually came to the fork in the road, but the field to the left, where we saw the weirdos and the fire and everything, was mostly a pond. We checked maps, drove around for hours, and talked to locals, but there was no other turnoff for the main road pointing toward the state park except for that turn, and the 1 mile further ahead that we normally used. That was almost 10 years ago, and I still have no idea what the hell we saw that night. I had just seen a midnight showing at the cinema with my 2 friends, and the car park was almost empty. We get into my car, start up the car, and Par pulls up and parks in the same spot next to me. I look over, and there's a guy staring creepy look about him. I motioned with my hand to him to see if he wanted anything, but he continued to stare without responding. Ugh. We started getting freaked out at this point, bearing in mind it was like almost 3 a.m., and we were in an almost empty car park. I decided just to drive off. As soon as I went, he began to follow. He followed me all the way out of the car park, out of the junction, and all the way up to a roundabout. Determined to lose this creep, I went around the roundabout a few times and finally managed to get away. He may have just wanted directions or something, but staring at 3 girls in a dark car park and following them sure is a weird way to go about asking. I got news for you. Well, first a shout out and then a comment. So I want to say hi to Big T. Thanks for listening while you're assembling furniture at the warehouse. We greatly appreciate it. And also on this story, I don't know if this is commonplace, especially anymore with online dating, but I know that back in the day, highway rest stops and off-ramps, sometimes there would be occasional people meeting up there to do some evening activities. Maybe the guy thought he was going to get some. I don't know. I don't know if that's just regionally relevant to my area, but that used to happen, I think. Anyway, hope that helps. Have a great day. One late night when I was around 12 or so, my older sister, her boyfriend, and I were driving back home from one of those Halloween haunted houses. We were talking and laughing about how much we jumped and yelled when we passed a car pulled over to the side. Normally this wouldn't be odd, but it was a busy 4-lane highway, and the driver's side door was left open with no emergency blinkers on. Just as we're all having a "that's weird" moment, suddenly we zoomed past a woman wearing a white coat less than a foot away from the car. I turned around as we passed and saw her just swaying in the road, not really trying to move one way or another. Of course, my imagination went wild. Maybe she was an escaped mental patient. Maybe she was possessed. Being around Halloween, all those thoughts seemed natural. Talking about it with my sister, even years later, she was probably trying to kill herself. I don't know what happened to her, but sometimes when I'm driving late at night, I still think about seeing her face distorted by speed and darkness through my window. This probably isn't that scary, unless you happen to be there, and happen to be a wimp like me, but it still freaks me out a little, so I'll write it out. My buddy and I got out of a movie around 1 or 2 a.m. in a part of town we weren't really familiar with. And as we were leaving, we got kind of turned around, but we figured we were close to the highway and would find it either way. Well, we were wrong, apparently because we kept heading in one direction until the sound of the highway completely disappeared, and it just kept getting darker and darker and quieter. Like, I'm sure it was just our imagination, but it honestly looked like it was getting continuously harder to see, even though it was already dead of night, with no street lamps and our headlights were on. And we were still within city limits, but everything just kept getting more and more foresty looking the further we drove. This is all within a few minutes, mind you. Eventually, we were just looking for a good place to turn around, but it took us forever to find it. Eventually, we did manage to turn around and find our way back to the highway, but not before experiencing this weird, primal, psychological horror that we were going to be sucked into the abyss or whatever. Anyways, that's all that came of it. Like I said, we're wimps. I was driving home late one night, somewhere between 1 and 3 a.m. The stretch of road I was driving goes through the back end of a couple of counties in the deep south. Nothing around but forest, fields, and the occasional group of shacks huddling under a light that only barely keeps away the night. I'd driven this stretch of road many times before, even at this time of night, so it wasn't really a big deal, just a long trip. Since there were rarely any traffic that time of night, during the day you could always count on at least a handful of cars somewhere around. I was able to turn the stereo up and push the pedal down. And then I came to this bridge. Nothing really noteworthy about it. It's not ancient or a covered bridge or all that spooky. Just a concrete span over a swampland, trees growing right up near the edge and turning the road into a dim trail at the bottom of a dark canyon. I'd been over this bridge many times before, and aside from being fairly long, it wasn't really noteworthy. Until that night. It was humid out, and as the temperature dropped, there was a little bit of fog. Not enough to really slow me down, but I had to turn off the high beams. So I'm shooting across the bridge, and it hits me that it seems to be taking longer than normal to get across it. Maybe I was just tired. Maybe my mind was playing tricks on me. And then I thought I was finally getting to the end of it. I saw a figure walking the opposite side of the road. At first, no big deal, right? Guy walking in the middle of nowhere in the middle of the night. Probably lives nearby, probably drunk. Watch them to make sure they don't fall in front of the car. But my mind is already racing. I mean, this is the middle of nowhere. There are no houses around. There are no lights, but the stars and my headlights stabbing out of the darkness. And as I whiz by, going way too fast for my own good, I noticed two things. First, the figure is wearing what appears to be a straitjacket, the sleeves undone, and the straps trailing to the ground, glaring white against the background of the night. No mistaking it, a straitjacket, hands covered, straps dangling and waving as he walked. Second, it has no face, not like there's no head there. There's a head shape and the place where a face should be, but no face. Just an expanse of darkness that I took to be his skin. I chalked it up to going really fast, contrast between white jacket and dark skin at night, and thinking creepy thoughts. I mean, surely I couldn't have just seen that. I tried to spot him in my rearview mirror, but it was so dark there was nothing to be seen. I slowed down a little and was suddenly off the end of the bridge and on a normal 2-lane blacktop again. I briefly considered turning around, seeing what it was. Surely it was just a trick of the light or my mind playing tricks on me, right? But I still remember being and hearing my heart pounding and the fear as I sped on through the darkness, driving home. I was driving home at 4 a.m. or so from my night job, and it was just me on an empty highway as far as I could see. I saw a woman in white mini dress and no shoes running down the highway screaming. She had makeup smeared all down her face and her hair was all fucked up. I slowed down and kind of stopped staring at her. I was thinking of every horror movie ever seen, and yep, this is how it starts. She ran up to my car window, and I nearly peed my pants because, not makeup and up hair, blood everywhere, all over her face, and her hair was missing smeared with blood and spots. About half a mile down the road, there was a rollover accident, convertible, no seatbelts, all 3 people drunk. Bloody mini-dress woman was the only survivor, and she was damn disfigured from road burn, and she ran half a mile in the dark down a highway trying to get help for her friends. I called 911 and waited with this poor, drunk, bloody woman in my car. God, it was awful. I had nightmares for years of her running right toward my car on an empty road. Don't drive drunk without seatbelts in a convertible. There are easier ways to die. Also, I saw a little bit of the other 2 bodies as I drove past the police barricade out of the corner of my eye. Enough to know that I never, ever want to rubberneck accidents again. One night during my 3rd year of college, I was driving home from an evening summer class. I remember Britney Spears was just starting to come back, so I was hopping and bopping and singing along to her music about 10 p.m. When I was turning into the road my house was on, it's out in suburbia, no one on the streets, this is important, barely any streetlights. As I was turning, this guy just walks out in front of my car, just from the corner of my eye, straight in front of me. He turns and looks at me, and I go over him. The weirdest part is that I know exactly what he looks like. Older Caucasian male, salt and pepper hair, fit, orange baseball cap, beige jacket, and dark blue jeans. I still remember how his blue-gray eyes looked at me milliseconds before I hit him. He looked solid. The glare from my headlights bounced off of him. Obviously, even though I didn't hear a thump or feel anything, I thought I just ran over a person, so I immediately pulled over to the curb and got out. Except there's no one there. I looked under my car and called out and looked around, but there was no one. I still don't know what it was or might have been. Driving past a monastery that was abolished and destroyed during the reign of King Henry VIII at about 4:30 a.m. on the way to work. I had read a few stories about local folk, law, and ghosts. It kind of fascinates me and it creeps me out at the same time. There are numerous reports of a ghostly nun appearing between 2 set points as you get into the woods when passing. The story goes that the back door of the monastery and the hedgerow on the other side of the road that since the 50s a little bus shelter marks the end of, was the footpath into town, and this route was haunted by nuns of the past, with numerous reports of figures appearing at last minute in the middle of the road, and even one from a police officer who nearly crashed his bike. Anyhow, pitch black as the open road enters the woods and approach the ruins. I'm thinking about the story as it's 4:30 a.m. and I'm on my own. I follow the road around. It turns and dips as you round the bus stop bend, and I nearly have a fucking seizure. As my headlights swing into the dip, I'm met with this pillar of white in the middle of the road. I'm surprised poo didn't come out. However, within a split second, I realized exactly what it was. No idea what kicked in, but I just went into full-on logic mode. Essentially, the tree's canopy create a cold spot around the ruins, and the lowest point of this cold spot is the exact point on the bend where the nun appears. As warm pre-dawn air gently flows in during summer, this would cause cold air to condensate. Turns out that it's nothing but a patch of fog or mist that forms on any given night when conditions allow. Me and my cousin were on a road trip through Sweden, and it was about midnight. We were in some woods on a really small road when we all of a sudden pass a huge Christian cross that has been put up on the side of the road. We keep going, and then there is a church on the top of the hill with braziers all around it. And we noticed that it's a town around it, but there is no light whatsoever in the town. No traffic lights. No lights in any of the houses. It's all pitch black except this lit up church. And we start to joke about Children of the Corn as we drive into town at a slow speed. There were no lights, and we did not want to hit anyone if someone was out walking at night. And when we passed the church, we noticed that there is about 100 people outside of the church, with torches just standing there and watching us as we drove by. And we were looking at them in complete silence. It was probably just midnight, mass or something, but after about 1 hour on a small road in the woods in complete darkness, going into that was absolutely as creepy as it gets. I'm driving through Arkansas heading up to Ohio. Neither of these states are places I want to be, but whatever. I had to cross a back road to get between two state highways, and before I merged back on, I pulled into a gas station to fill up. Maybe it was the late hour, or maybe I was just stupid, but when my TomTom told me to leave the station, heading west instead of taking the nearby access road, then cross over the highway and loop back around it, I blindly followed it. And this is how I found myself in Nowhere, Arkansas, driving down a pitch-black dirt road, desperately looking for the highway. A glint of metal and a faint glow in the distance indicates I'm coming up on something. So I slow down and creep up on what turns out to be a dirty, rusted pickup and an oil can fire. Illuminated by the fire is a small group of people, dressed in dark robes with gold trim. Very fancy. And in the middle of them is a redneck wearing nothing but a John Deere trucker's hat, balls deep in the biggest sow I've ever seen. Ugh. The group, the redneck, and even the pig all slowly turned to lock eyes with this poor effer that just rolled up on this horrible scene. Slowly I backed up, made a 3-point turn, and left the way I came. I didn't even bother checking the rear view. Ugh. Back when I was in college, 2006 and 7, I used to just drive around at night if I couldn't sleep and just wanted to clear my head. This was in southeastern Ohio, so once you get away from the highway and towns, there's next to nothing out there. Lots of woods, reclaimed mine land, abandoned buildings, you get the point. So, one night I go out for a drive, maybe 2 or 3 at night, and I just drive south of town like I often did. I swear to God, I had driven the same route a dozen times, but after 15 minutes or so, something seems off. It's late though, and I was starting to get tired, so I didn't think anything of it. Anyway, I keep driving and eventually decide that I'll turn around on a side street in the next little intersection town, since they should be one coming up soon. Like I said, I've gone this way before, so I keep driving and it just keeps getting more and more desolate. Abandoned barns and farmhouses, weird spotty patches of woods, abandoned looking fields, then suddenly the road just turns to gravel and dirt and I get really uncomfortable. I realize very suddenly that this is not familiar at all, and I've definitely never been in this place before. I decided to turn around in the next driveway I see, but then after a patch of woods, the road just dead-ended into a little patch of dirt. I turned my car around real damn fast and just booked it back to the last state route I passed and went back to my dorm. I brought a friend back out with me later that week, and I swear to God, I could never find that place again. Even tried in the daylight. Freaks me out to this day, thinking about where the hell I suddenly ended up. For what it's worth, I do realize the strong possibility that I took a wrong turn and ended up somewhere weird, but I never could figure out where that was. This happened just last weekend, actually. My sister, her fiance, and I were headed home after hanging out on a Saturday and looking for a place to eat. We decided on Chili's, as it was one of the only places still open that wasn't a Denny's, IHOP, or fast food place at the time of night. On the way over, a woman comes screaming into the middle of a 5-lane road, trying to flag us down. This is a high-traffic road in the middle of the night. She was seriously running away from something too brave running out into traffic like that to get someone's attention. We slow down and ask her what's wrong, and she tells us a man she was with, whom she works with, suddenly turned on her and tried to assault her. She was in hysterics, and we could see the man in question eyeing us from near the intersection. She's pleading with us while hysterical and just repeating that she doesn't know what to do and that she's terrified. She's also on the phone with her dad, asking him to pick her up. After some terrified hesitation, we're all girls, we offer her a ride in our car until her dad can get over here to pick her up. She asks to be brought to a nearby hotel, and while we're waiting out front, another car comes by us and tells us the guy had taken off running toward us as soon as we drove away and that we needed to get out of there. We thank her and leave, and sure enough, we see him entering the parking lot just as we're leaving. We hightail it to a nearby Forever 21. This was near a major shopping district when all of this happened, and waited until the girl's dad showed up and took her. All in all, it ended up okay, but our minds were racing as it all happened. We were initially scared of letting her in because you don't mean to be a cynic, but you do hear about people playing scams like that. But in the end, we thought it was a better decision to possibly die and thinking you'd help someone rather than live with not helping them. Glad she got somewhere safe, though. I was driving down this creepy road in New Jersey around midnight called Clinton Road, which is supposed to be haunted. On the way down the road, I saw a bunch of old-school, all-white Cadillacs that probably belonged to a bunch of KKK members, as there is an abandoned castle-type building in the woods. On the way back to the road, I stopped at what is called Dead Man's Curve or something, and story goes that if you throw a quarter off the bridge, it'll bounce back at your car. Story goes that a kid was trying to pick up a coin and got hit by a car and died near the bridge. Sure enough, I turned my car off, turned off the lights, rolled down my window, threw a coin off the bridge, and sure enough, I heard it hit the ground next to my car about 15 seconds later. I sped out of there. Then, yes, there is more. I was driving and see some dude walking all weird and leaning back. Me being an R, I roll down my window and ask him if he is alright. And as he is walking all weird, he forces his head towards me and very forcefully says, "Yeah," in the creepiest voice. He had no shoes or socks on, and his eyes looked all black. I sped out of there. Then, some pickup chased me off the road. I'm not superstitious, religious, or anything like that. To this day, it was the weirdest shit that's happened.